The deal from the government has improved. They are willing to negotiate. Why don't doctors accept it?
Well, they've only been willing to negotiate to a certain extent. And the fundamental points that the BMA keep bringing up about being fair and being safe, there are still problems with that. He says that the Secretary of Health has said that when the public and the doctors see this contract, they will get on board. Well, actually, the BMA have seen the contract. They have seen it, and they still have fundamental issues with it.
Are you satisfied the BMA are doing enough to compromise? Because the government feel that they are offering some sort of compromise here. They've improved the terms for working on a Saturday. 1 in 4, if you're working those 1 in 4 Saturdays, you'll get uplift in your pay as a result.
Any compromise that happens, I agree, has to come from both sides. But fundamentally, it still has to be fair and safe for patients and staff. It still has to be fit for the future. We still have to be able to provide a sustainable service, be that a 7-day service or whatever day service we want to call it. The BMA have always had an open policy for negotiation, and they reiterate that time and time again.
Denise Vorse on Facebook says, I agree on 7-day care, but not at the expense of doctors' physical, emotional or financial expense, Nick.
Well, it's not really going to be too much of a financial expense where they're getting a 35% pay rise. And also on the emotional and working hours, they're actually being, in the negotiations, being protected 75-hour overtime a week, where at the moment they're working 90 hours overtime a week. So through the negotiations, which they walked out of when they went to strike yesterday, they were actually winning ground on these key issues.
The government is now going to impose what they believe is a fair deal on junior doctors. That's a hell of a gamble, isn't it?
Well, the problem is, I think Jeremy Hunt was pushed into this position. It was clear that the doctors' union were not interested in this contract. It was politically motivated because they are politically against a 7-day NHS. If they actually cared about the negotiations, they wouldn't have walked away, they wouldn't be striking, which I must point out puts lives at risk when doctors go on strike. So if they really cared, they would be negotiating the contract.
With all due respect, though, a bad contract will also put lives at risk, and we are not talking about a 35% pay rise. It's supposed to be a cost-neutral exercise, so I don't understand how anybody gets a pay rise.
OK, you're saying it's not being a pay rise. Now, 3/4 of doctors, it will be a pay rise. Now, there's going to be a certain amount of doctors who, over time, where there's going to be some more overtime. It comes from the government, it comes from negotiations, it's there.
Which have been shown to be time and time again to be inaccurate, I'm afraid. So the information on which it's being based is fundamentally inaccurate, therefore the answers and conclusions will be inaccurate.
Ranj, let me just point this point to you that John Gatt makes on Facebook. For all the rhetoric, it basically comes down to money. Premium payments for working weekends, well, actually, in this case, it's Saturdays. You would get paid extra for Sundays, are a thing of the past. Ask anyone who works in industry. People who work in supermarkets, in bars, hairdressers, anywhere. Saturday is like any other day of the week. Sunday may be different, but Saturday. So why can't doctors accept that as well?
Absolutely, and I firmly believe that we should provide a good 7-day service. The problem is you cannot compare professions with other professions. It doesn't pan out. A doctor's job is very different to someone who works in a supermarket. It's very different to my dad who works nights in a warehouse.
Yeah.
These are very, very different circumstances. The decisions and the work involved is extremely different. So you cannot compare them as if they were like for like. This is a highly...
Hang on, why is it different for a doctor working on a Saturday as opposed to working on a Friday?
It's not just the fact that it's a Saturday. We all work Saturdays, we all work Sundays. We offer, emergency care 24/7. It's the nature of the work. And it's the fact that, making decisions on call when you're working late into the night or long hours on the weekends, it does affect your ability to make those very, very important, sometimes life or death decisions.
Nick Ann Marshall makes the point on Facebook, the government must be one of the most uncaring ever. They won't be satisfied until we're back to paying for everything again. Some cynics suggest this could lead to privatisation of doctors' services through the back door. If they quit en masse, as many are threatening to do, they'll have to be hired back, won't they, to fill those gaps, and that'll cost more in the long run.
I think the quitting en masse is disgraceful, actually. Us, the taxpayer...
Do you believe them?
Well, I'll tell you what, us taxpayer, we spend £1 billion a year on junior doctors training. Now, for then junior doctors to say that, OK, my Saturday's not going to be classed as overtime, therefore I'm going to go off and sun myself in Australia. Now, you don't hear
Well, they'll be working in Australia, to be fair.
Well, okay, well, you don't hear soldiers who are being paid £19,000 on the front line of Afghanistan who are giving up their lives fighting, and yes, they work Saturdays, Sundays. Actually, they tend to work about 3 months non-stop under heavy stress and duress. You don't hear them saying, I want more overtime pay. If you don't give me that, I'm off to Australia.
But we're not asking for a pay rise, though, Nick, are we?
You're negotiating. Well, you are being treated fairly. Why did you walk out negotiations?
Just briefly, Ranj, actually, I just want to finish on this point. It must be difficult for any doctor who goes into it vocationally. I can't imagine there are many going into being a junior doctor for the money.
None of us went
to square this argument in yourself.
Well, that's the very fact that even people may even be considering leaving a profession what they went into because they care about patients and they care about caring for people and getting them better. The very fact that we're thinking about walking away from that should ring massive alarm bells with everybody.